Hey folks, if you're wondering what the takeaways from CAT 21 VRC section were, here they are. I have 5 major takeaways to share with you. Let's go through that. Takeaway number 1 was almost all questions in CAT 2021 VRC were inference based. Okay, so now inference based questions are not new in CAT. They've been there for a very long time. But most of the questions this time, last year, were inference based, around 95% of the questions. So there are broadly 2 types of questions. There is fact-based and inference-based. Fact-based is an information locating exercise, right? So you read a question. If it's a fact-based question, you read the question, you go to the passage, locate where the information is, and that's it. You can answer the question. So it's much easier than an inference-based question. Inference-based questions require you to understand what the author is saying. Simply locating the information is not enough. You'll have to understand or read between the lines, understand what the author is saying. Okay, so an inference is what? You have information given to you, you take that information, process it, understand it, and then answer the question. Okay, so it's similar to data and insights, right? You have a bunch of data, you draw insights out of it. Similarly, you draw inferences from existing information. So requires comprehension, requires understanding. Now, this in CAT 2022 also, I would say most of the questions most likely will be inference based. So definitely in your preparation strategy, focus on comprehension. When you're building your reading skills, focus on comprehension. Keep speed as second. Comprehension is definitely first. Focus on understanding what you're reading and build that skill. But that will really help you in answering inference-based questions. Okay, let's look at a couple of examples. Now, the first one says, which one of the following sets of words and phrases serves best as keywords of the passage? Now, this is a common question type that appears. It started in 2020. In 21, we saw a higher number of these questions appearing. It's a little complex to answer this question. It is based on central idea. You'll have to understand the central idea of the passage and then choose an option which will probably have 4 keywords that best matches the central idea. So you won't have sentences and options, you'll have keywords, you'll have to match it with the main points. Definitely inference based. Second one, all of the following statements may be considered valid inferences from the passage, except. Again, requires you to understand the passage. Okay, so definitely focus on comprehension from day 1 of your CAT prep. All right, let's look at takeaway number 2, critical reasoning questions. Again, nothing new. It's not like it appeared for the first time. They've been appearing for a very long time. In 21, we saw a higher number of critical reasoning questions, right? Now, these questions also tend to be complex in nature, and there are certain strategies that you have to learn to answer different types of critical reasoning questions. Okay, so definitely focus on that as part of your CAT prep. Learn the different types of CR questions, learn the different strategies, because this is also here to stay. It's not going anywhere. In 2022 also, you can expect a sizable number of critical reasoning questions. So definitely make that a good, solid part of your prep. Let's look at a couple of examples. The first one says, which one of the following, if true, would not undermine the democratizing potential of the classic Maya worldview? Okay. Of course, it's a very specific question to the passage that appeared, but this is a CR question, similar to a weakening question. Second one is a classic one. Which one of the following, if true, would weaken the author's claims in the passage? Right? So again, specific strategies for specific CR question types, make sure to learn that. Let's look at takeaway number 3, new RC question types. So 21 saw a few brand new RC question types, okay, which were very interesting. But what happens is, because we've never seen these question types appear, it takes a while to process the question itself. So it becomes a little time consuming. They were manageable, definitely manageable, but time consuming because, you have to understand the question stem, then, process the answer and give the answer. So definitely be mentally prepared that in 22 as well, you might see new question types that you've never seen before. Okay. So you need to be mentally prepared for that. And also, one way of preparing is expose yourself to as many question types as possible. So when you're preparing for CAT, prepare the different question types, especially from the past papers, right? Look at the past, let's say 5 years of CAT and look at all the questions that have appeared and then prepare accordingly. Expose yourself to as many question types as possible. Be open-minded. That should help you to solve these kind of questions. Okay, let's look at a couple of examples. Now, this appeared at actually the slot that I appeared for. Which one of the following statements, if true, would be the most direct extension of the arguments in the passage? So this is going beyond the passage, right? We've never seen a question like that. So you understand the passage first. It requires you to understand it, and then you extend it. You see how this passage can, so basically you have to follow the chain of arguments and think of, okay, what can be the next argument that the author potentially can give after the passage, right? So you're going beyond the passage. Very interesting question. It was manageable, it wasn't very difficult, but time consuming because we'd never seen that. Okay. Double negatives, that's the fourth takeaway. Again, this is not new, but in 21 we saw a higher number of questions with double negatives. 2020 also had its share of double negatives. I think it was quite sort of, it was a little, it gave a jolt in 2020 because we've never seen so many number of double negatives. 2021, I think the number went up. So this also seems like it will stay. In 2022 also, we might see a lot of double negatives in the question stems. So prepare for that. Let's look at a couple of examples. None of the following statements can be inferred from the passage except that. So you've got none and except, double negative. Here also you have the author would support none of the following statements about political power except that. Okay. If you're not used to this question type, your head is going to spin a little bit. So definitely prepare, right? There is a strategy to solve these questions. You have to practice these questions beforehand and then you'll be fine in the exam. If you don't practice, it's going to be very difficult to solve this in that time constraint. Okay. So definitely focus on double negatives as well. And finally, this one, very, very important. Verbal ability in 21 was a major score booster, right? So RC is about 65 to 70% of your question paper. Verbal ability is about 25 to 30%. Now, for some reason, a lot of students deprioritize this. I don't know what the mindset is or where it's coming from, but I've seen this happening. People tend to think, oh, RC is a major chunk, and it is. So they focus all their energies on preparing for RC and ignore verbal ability. Now that backfired in 2021 because verbal ability was manageable. So the students who gave it sufficient time in the exam to verbal ability scored quite high in that section. It was a very lucrative section. Okay. So my tip here is please do not deprioritize verbal ability. Okay. See, if you look at quant, for example, you have a bunch of topics, like 30, 40 topics. You might decide to ignore 5 topics as part of your strategy. I'm not a quant expert, but I guess you might decide to do that. That does not work for VARC. Please do not ignore verbal ability. You have to focus on RC, of course, but you have to prepare for verbal ability as well. Solve as many question types as possible. This can be a very lucrative section. And then decide, of course, closer to the exam, how would you split the time? Okay, so do not deprioritize verbal ability. All right, great. I hope you found this useful. Thanks for watching. All the best for your CAT prep.